Hi everyone, what's up? Welcome to the new episode of your Friedrich podcast. Yes, here we are once again. So, you know what you have to be done. You just go grab your beer, juice, soda, popcorn, as you know, whatever it takes for you to relax and be on the vibe with us right here, right now. And the topic we're going to discuss today is none other than films, if you're in the UK, if you're in the US, movies and series, and how much can you do or how much can be taken from them in order to have your skills, I would say, especially listening skills, evolved. So, if you're curious, let's go on this journey together. Yeah, of course, it's not only a matter of how much you can understand, you can improve your listening skills, that is, the ability to understand spoken English in this case, right? We're gonna focus here 100% in English, all right? Because I understand that if you're listening to me right now and you're at least understanding the topic debated here, discussed here, or spoken here, you're an English student, all right? Okay, having said that, watching movies, series are 100% useful when you're starting off with the language journey, as I always put it. Why? Because this is a very effective and of course fun way to get in contact with the culture of that country, right? This happens for one very simple and easy to understand fact. The movies are not produced to language learners, all right? It's completely different. It's totally different watching something that is produced to language learners, that is to people who are studying the language, in this case English, because they're going to avoid certain popular expressions in the purest of the term, right? That is, some things that come naturally from the language, okay, from the language and from the culture, putting it in better terms, from the cultural environment, all right? So every time you watch a movie, there will be jokes, there will be sarcasm, there will be history, culture, and many other points that we could list here, all right? And this is very good because if you're learning a language, I believe that you expect at some point at least, being interacting with the native speakers, all right? And everything I have said and the other points I haven't mentioned are inevitably part of the language. There's no speaking a language as a robot, as a robot, in a robotic way, I would say. Anyway, so of course, getting to understand, getting to be exposed to to a natural spoken language, which totally happens when you're watching a movie or or a series, whatever, you get my point here. It is something that will take your experience with the language from this point here, okay? I know it's a podcast, there's no visual, so from a lower point to a quite higher, or at least a little higher point, and progressively until it's so natural for you as it is for anyone else with the language, right? So having this cultural experience around the language is what I would say the most interesting and the most important thing of learning through movies and series, all right? So having put this introduction here, I would like to just jump straight to the point number one, okay? We're gonna talk about three main points here, and number one is the titles, or in other words, the aka subtitles, all right? There are basically two strategies for you to tackle a language, okay? When you're learning and you want to watch movies with it, all right? So if you're listening to this point and you're understanding, you're following, my point here, I believe you have already passed point number one, but I'll address it anyways. All right. That is watching the movie with in English, okay, in the original language. All right. That can work for movies that are dubbed in English. All right. Say there's a Chinese movie dubbed in English. That will work, of course, provided that the subtitles are paired, are okay. All right. That will work. Okay. Not to mention the dubbing work, okay? But it's not so. We don't have this. If you're Brazilian, and you're probably Brazilian, we consume a lot of dubbed materials in Brazil, okay? And as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe many other countries, especially the big ones, can rival us, quote unquote rival us on this subject. I don't know if I'm proud of it when I'm saying that, but the point is there's lots of dub materials, especially coming from the States and England, from English-speaking countries. Anyways, I just kind of lost track here. Let me just go back to the point. So point number one is watching a movie in English, original language, okay, preferably. With the subtitles in Portuguese, all right, or in your modern language, basically. Okay, so by doing that, you will have the exposure to the language, okay, to English. At the same time, you're not gonna be lost at any points because you will be understanding whatever is being said. But there is a quite simple point here that if you haven't already crossed that point, and if you haven't already understood that is, your practice is not 100%, effective as it could and would be if you were doing step number 2 that you probably have already guessed. That is watching the movie in English with subtitles in English. All right, it isn't as effective as it is, although it can be more pleasant because you don't have to be pausing the video all the time, okay, to check the words being said, that or checking the expressions or any lines or repeating any lines that you didn't really get quite well. So yeah, okay, there's this thing of because you're in a comfort zone. Putting in simple terms, you're in a comfort zone if you're doing that. If you're just watching the movie in English with titles in Portuguese, because most people do that. Okay, let me just share a personal story here. When I was growing up, when I was like 12, so I absolutely knew nothing about English apart from a couple of words, literally a couple of words. I remember a father of friends of mine, okay, he didn't speak English either, okay. I knew back in the days half a dozen words in English, literally. He knew 0, probably, or maybe 1 or 2. Anyways, he didn't speak English, far from it. Simple guy, nothing, but he was addicted to watching movies, he just loved watching American movies. And much to our surprise, okay, let's just think about what I've just said about Brazil having lots of dubbed movies. Everyone watches movies in dubbed movies, okay, dubbed in Portuguese. If you watch a movie on TV, it's very, very unusual if it's not dubbed. All right, I'm saying unusual because I want to say impossible. Anyways, so he liked it too. That was quite unusual, especially for someone who didn't really speak English, okay, who knew practically nothing of it. But he liked that. I asked him a couple of times. He would say, yeah, original audio is much better, okay. My point here is, he didn't speak English. He probably doesn't speak English to this very moment, okay. He never, because he doesn't want, of course. But my point here is, if you think that you're going to be watching movies in English and, with subtitles in Portuguese, and that alone will take you to fluency, with all due respect, think again, okay? Because that's not gonna happen, okay? Respectfully, that's not gonna happen, okay? It's almost impossible that you will learn English that way, okay? But of course, it's a good starter, okay? That's something you can do, so you can I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but to massage, quote unquote, your ears, your, with the sounds of the language, the phonemes of the language, okay, and anything else related to it, or the rhythm of the language and things like that. Okay, that can work, but that's just a quite an embryonic stage, okay? And let's just finally go to step number 2 here. That is, when you watch a movie in English with subtitles in English, okay? Provided, of course, that the subtitles are not impaired, meaning that someone says something, okay, in the movie, and the subtitles bring like a synonym, like something said with the same meaning but with different words, okay? Provided that that's not the case, provided that you have a very paired, okay, I use this term, I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but I think you get me. If there's a quite good pairing system between the spoken and the written, okay, on the screen, you're good, okay, because you're going to have the experience of listening and reading at the same time, okay, and this will break a lot of natural barriers, okay. What are these natural barriers I'm talking about? Natural barriers are the fact that every language has vocal connections that will get, foreigners lost, okay? No matter what language, like Portuguese and Spanish are very similar languages, but if they're two native speakers, be that Spanish native speakers or Portuguese native speakers, close, to a third person who is, a speaker of Spanish or Portuguese in that case, right? They won't understand each other because there are these, they will understand lots of words being said, probably the context, but not all the words, precisely because of this. If you don't jump into a language, no matter how similar this language can be to your native language, if you don't, jump into it, and that's exactly what I'm suggesting here. You do that when you're watching movies. You do that when you're watching series. You're never gonna cross these barriers. Meaning, like, hey, I never realized, I didn't know that this word and that word put together would cause this extra sound. I don't want to be specific about this, but I think you understand my point here, okay? So when you're listening to spoken language, okay, and this is quite present in movies and series, of course, right? This is what they're made of. You are having the experience, and you, of course, as I said, listening to it and reading it word by word. You're having a privilege. How can I put this? A privilege view, quote unquote, from the dialogue. And by doing that and adding to it the fact that you can pause, rewind, play it again, I think rewind is an old term, okay? You can pull it back to a couple of seconds, rewatch the scene 100 times, 1,000 times if necessary. This will get you in the right direction, okay? Although it's, of course, not the end of the line, okay? The end of the line is turning off subtitles, right? That's the end of the line, but that's a quite simple point and doesn't require, in my opinion, much explanation. All right, so you have turned off the subtitles and you're watching it 100%. You're watching your Netflix series, your movies, your favorite movies, 100% in English, right? Point number 2 is, how much can you understand? How much can you expect understanding at the beginning? Right. Well, that's a tricky question. There isn't necessarily an answer to it, I would say. Sorry, but yeah. But I believe that you have to know your limits. Okay. And not, of course, and most importantly than knowing even more important than knowing your limits is not punish yourself. Every student, every learner's got their own rhythm of learning, okay, their own journey. I love using this word when it comes to being learning a language, right, or anything for that matter. So everyone's got their own path. So don't punish yourself, okay? Be honest to yourself. Don't pretend that you understand, okay? And here I am, of course, talking about the interaction, the face-to-face interaction with people in the language. If you listen to something and you don't understand anything or something, or you get totally lost, you just say that, or you just demonstrate that to everyone around. Okay, that's not a problem. That's not embarrassing. No, not at all. But trying to answer that question of how much can you expect understanding, if you're in a point that your subtitles are turned off, basically, while watching a movie, I would say that you can pretty much expect understanding at least 90% of the movie. Otherwise, maybe you should reconsider if that is the adequate time, the correct time, the correct moment to turning subtitles off. All right. One thing that's important to be said, though, when you're watching a movie, as far as the dialogues are concerned, they don't happen. I don't know if you've realized that by watching even movies in your own language, right? But the dialogues aren't like 100% natural, okay? In movies and series here, okay? I'm not talking about podcasts here or any kind of other videos you can watch. The dialogues aren't 100% natural, and because there are like literally counted in the stream, okay? That's the way it is. It's not gonna change, okay? There's no repetition of words unless it is a part of the plot, okay? Let me just exemplify that. Someone says, "Hey, good morning." Then the other person will say, "Hey, sorry, can you repeat? I didn't get what you said." Like, that's a ridiculous example, but you understand that. Like, there won't be things like that. It's not movies. The dialogues in movies aren't spontaneous dialogues. They're people acting. Okay, so my point here is, don't punish yourself if you don't understand everything. I myself, I just turned on a movie right now, and especially if it's a movie with a fictional world, where there will be words in the dialogues regarding to cities, continents, people, famous people, which I won't be related to. I won't understand most of it. So there's context of the story, of course. You have to know the context of the story in order to expect understanding at least 90%. You have to have good quality of audio, okay? Because English isn't a language as phonetically speaking, isn't a language as precise, okay? My English speaking friends will forgive me here, but and if you can totally disagree, of course, that's fine. But it isn't a language, phonetically speaking, quite how can I put this, and I don't want to be unfair here, but phonetically speaking, English can be a little dubious, okay? I'm not undermining the language or anything. I love it, but it can be a little dubious. Any language can be dubious at some point, but let's put here the Latin words, like Portuguese, my first language here, compared to English. Portuguese is much more objective phonetically speaking, and Spanish is even more than Portuguese. I can say that because I can also speak Spanish. But anyways, so English is a little dubious as a language as far as phonetic goes. So you make sure you have like good audio input, like a headphone, good quality, or in a room where the sound can spread around, because if I myself am in the room with lots of people talking, I get distracted. I'm a Gemini. I get distracted pretty easily, So if I'm in a room with other people speaking, especially speaking out loud, and there's a movie or anything in English going on the screen, on the TV, sorry, I won't understand all of it. Of course, I won't even understand 30% of it, so I have to sit and pay attention, right? And the more beginner you are for that point, okay, of watching movies in English without subtitles, or even with the subtitles in English, but with the subtitles, it's another story, as I've presented before here on this episode. Unless you have it, you won't, have a good quote unquote performance. All right, that's the word, performance. Okay. And last but not least is the question about vocabulary. Okay, when I'm watching a movie in English, should I take notes of the new words? Yes or no? Well, I would say yes and no at the same time. Once again, being controversial here. Why yes and no? Yes, because of course that's the perfect, or if not perfect, almost perfect opportunity to learn a new words in a comfortable place, right? You can pause the video and then you jot down the words on a notebook or something like that, or your cell phone or anything. Okay. And no, because, well, of course, at the it is supposed to be fun, either way. You won't be watching a movie just because it's in English, right? You can do that sometimes, but that's not something that will catch you in a good sense, right? So what I recommend is watching the movie first of all in a comfortable position. I hope that this comfortable position, I really hope that this comfortable position for you, if you're the B1 level of English, or even an A2, that is pre-intermediate or intermediate, I really hope that this comfortable place isn't like watching a movie dubbed, okay? But if it is, you know what? Who am I to judge? All right. But if this comfortable, I presume, right, is like watching the movie in English with the Portuguese subtitles, right? So you can understand the context, and then you rewatch the movie, of course, to watch it again, just because, the fun of watching it again, but also to, be pausing, putting, words on a notebook or something, and of course, finishing the movie and getting out of it, quote unquote, with new vocabulary, with important vocabulary. Okay? And that'll be all for this episode, a pretty short one, just so you don't forget me, just so I don't forget you guys. And that's it for today. Thank you so very much for your company. I see you in the next episode. My name is Gary, and bye.